Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. It's starting 11 prediction time for tomorrow's game at home against Dundee United. First of all, there's a few things to run through before we can get to the team for tomorrow, though. Just back from Madrid, of course, yesterday afternoon. What a brilliant trip it was. If you were there, I hope you've recovered. I'm sure there was a few sore heads going by the scenes over there. But it was a great trip. I obviously went through Lisbon, which I'm sure you've seen on the Celtic Fans TV social media. Brilliant experience to go and see the Estadio Nacional, to do the starting 11 prediction for the Real Madrid game from there. It was a pretty unique experience, and then to see Celtic in the Bernabeu is always something that I've wanted to do, as I'm sure it was for all the Celtic fans that were there. It's so long since we played Real Madrid, and we got to see a goal as well. It might have been a consolation, a 5-1 defeat, but nevertheless, it was a nice note to end on, despite the fact that it was a heavy defeat. Some positives to take in terms of what we created going forward, but again, a bit open at times and conceded some poor goals, and I think that's the areas of progression for the team next season. I've been reading through all the comments on the full-time reaction video from Madrid, and I know there's a lot of passionate opinions about where Celtic are at and how Celtic can compete, or how impossible it is for Celtic to compete at Champions League level. So many different opinions, but I think there's definitely levels to go for this team. They can get better. They can learn from the mistakes they've made in this campaign, and I expect them to develop and get better. And hopefully, if we can be there next season again, we can get more points, more wins, more goals, concede less, and become a more well-rounded team at that level. I know it's difficult, but I trust the work the manager's doing, and I think he's the best person to take us forward. There's nothing I want more than to see Celtic progress at Champions League level, and I hope we can do that if we can start making the competition year in and year out. Obviously, today it was the club's AGM. I've done my best to try and catch up as much as possible since I got home for work. If I've missed anything, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. The most interesting thing for me was Ange Postecoglou's comments about the transfer window, how agile and aggressive he feels the club need to be in the next 12 to 18 months in order for the team to progress, in order to build on the work that he's done already. I think there was more than a subtle nod to the fact that we will need to sell players. If the right bid comes in and it's right for all parties at that time, then we will need to let some of the top players go. I'm sure that's not news, or it shouldn't be news to you. I think that's the model Celtic operate on. I think they have to. We've seen it work well for us in the past. We've seen us make some mistakes in terms of maybe holding on to players a little bit too long. And I know it's difficult for us as supporters to watch our best players walking out the door, but I've never really had a criticism in terms of the club letting players go. My criticism in the past has been that the planning to replace them hasn't been good enough. And Ange talked about that today, and he was very keen to point out that if we can be aggressive enough and do the planning right, then there should be a 2 to 3 year regeneration cycle where you don't let things get stale, and when players do have to leave, you've got replacements ready, or at least on the way in. And I think that's something that the club have to do if they're going to rely on this sort of aggressive players trading model for growth and for revenue. I think that's something we've seen our rivals on the other side of the city really struggle with. They haven't done that well enough. They haven't been able to sell players at the right point in their cycle, and maybe it's gone a bit stale for some of those players now. And I think that's something that at Celtic we've done relatively well in recent years. Not always got it right, as I say, but I imagine it's very difficult. But I think Ange Postecoglou is not going to let the club fall asleep at the wheel, so to speak, as we've seen in the past. He seems really, really intent on building on what he's grown here at Celtic. And I think, based on the transfer windows he's had so far, I think we can make those progressions, we can make those improvements to the team, and try and take the club forward. But I think we are going to have to sell some players to do that. But if we can sell players at the peak of their value, then we can reinvest, and we should be able to reinvest higher transfer fees. I think one of the strengths of Ange Postecoglou's recruitment so far is that he's been able to get some bargains for us. Some really good players with high potential for relatively low fees, but if we can sell players for a high value, he should be allowed to reinvest more of that money and potentially bring players on bigger wages and bigger fees and keep that growth going, again with a view to trying to compete better at European level. Also today there was some talk about upgrading the stadium in some way. I think the club are going to do some form of supporter feedback. There was a discussion or a question at least about upgrading the main stand. I think that's definitely out of the question. I'm sure it was mentioned it would cost somewhere around £100 million, so it's totally out of the question. So I don't think it's going to be that sort of upgrade. But having been and seen a few stadiums in Europe in the last couple of years, I think the fan experience in Scotland and at Celtic Park could be much, much better. And I think the club have to take the lead on that. I think they have to show ambition and creativity and vision about how they want to improve the fan experience, because I know that matchday income is such a big part of Celtic's revenue, but I think they could do it even better, and I think they could maximise that more if the full day experience of going to Celtic Park was better and had more to it. There's lots of other examples, as I say, from across Europe that I'm sure they're aware of, and I think they should try and put their own spin on those sorts of things and bring them to Celtic Park. That's probably a whole other video for another day, but it is something I would like to see the club take steps to improve on. And the final thing from the AGM today that kind of stood out by its omission was the fact that we didn't find out who the new chairman's going to be, despite the fact the current chairman's leaving in about a month's time. So we wait with bated breath on that one, whoever the next chairperson is going to be. So let's get to the game tomorrow then. Dundee United have 1 win in their last 5 matches. They're under new management with Liam Fox since the last time we faced them. We obviously beat Jack Voss's Dundee United 9-0, and it was the result that finally cost Jack Voss his job. So they're probably going to look slightly different to the last time we faced them. But us coming off the back of that game in Madrid, I would expect a few changes to the team. But again, if we can match that intensity that we've had in the past couple of weeks, and even the intensity of our attacking play against Real Madrid the other night, I expect us to come out with the points. We will start in goals with Joe Hart. He obviously shipped 5 goals the other night. Not massively at fault for any of them, I suppose. The 2 penalties really killed us early in the game, but it's a hard one with Joe Hart. I think he's been absolutely brilliant for us, but I don't think he has that performance in him of a Fraser Foster against Barcelona, for example, and sometimes you need that in these games against these top European teams to stay in touch with them, to have any chance of getting something out of the game. But he's been brilliant for us, and I'm not having any talk of him being replaced or being dropped or anything like that. I think he'll definitely start in goals tomorrow. I think Anthony Ralston will come back at right back. He started the last 2 league games at Tynecastle and at Livingston last weekend. Juranovic did miss a penalty the other night. I don't think that's a descriptive of his whole performance, but I don't think he's been quite at the levels he was at last season so far. Josip Juranovic, the World Cup's coming up for him. Could he be one of those players that, I know Ange isn't talking about individuals today, but could he be one of the players that the club will have to make a decision on in terms of cashing in at the right value, whether it be in January or at the end of this season in the summer? I think he's probably one high up on that list, given his age, given how well he's done since he arrived here, and listen, if he has a good World Cup, I think the club could make really, really good money on him. And again, reinvest it and try and move forward. In centre half, I think Carter Vickers will be back. The manager confirmed today that he trained and he was fine. That'll be a huge boost for us. It was a pity he couldn't play the other night. Starfelt did come back into the team though, and I think he'll partner Carter Vickers tomorrow. I know he was out a long time, so maybe playing 2 games in the space of 3 or 4 days isn't ideal for him, but I think the quicker we can get back to that pairing of him and Carter Vickers, the better. I think Starfelt was good the other night, given how long he'd been out. I know he's maybe at fault for, I think, the Vinicius goal, which is at the 4th goal for Real Madrid, where he just gets in on his blind side and Starfelt can't cut it out. But I thought, considering the length of time he's been out since early September, he did well being thrust into that game. At left back, I think Greg Taylor will keep his place. Again, probably his most difficult night of the season the other night, but listen, if it's no difficult going to play Real Madrid in the Bernabeu, I don't know what is. In midfield, I think O'Reilly will keep his place there. I think Hatate will play as well, but I think we'll see a change. I think David Turnbull might start this game tomorrow. I think I put him in the starting 11 prediction last week against Livingston, actually, and he didn't start the game. But I just think Aaron Moy has played a lot of games recently. We know he's in the twilight of his career, and I think tomorrow is a good opportunity for Turnbull to start the game, and I think it's the ideal sort of game for him. I think having those 3 in midfield in a domestic game at home where we can dominate the play. I think that'll give us some creativity in midfield and a goal threat with Turnbull, as we know, at domestic level. On the right-hand side, I think Liel Abada will start. He has 5 goals against Dundee United. That's more than he's got against any other team in Scotland since he arrived at the club. He obviously scored a hat-trick last time out at Tannadice. I think he'll get the nod on the right-hand side. Could we see James Forrest come into that position? I don't think that's out of the question. He was one of the players that wasn't involved during the week in Madrid, so we could possibly see him come into the team, but I'm just going to go with Abada on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, I think it will be Jota. A lot of people surprised that he maybe didn't start the other night. I think, given how important he is to us, I would like to see him start as well. But I understand why he didn't. Again, he was out for a period of time. He only had that 10-15 minutes off the bench against Livingston 3 or 4 days before the game against Real Madrid, so it's maybe not a huge surprise that he didn't start. You never know what the medical advice is for the physios, the sports science team. That could maybe have affected the manager's decision making in starting him. I don't know. But I think he'll definitely start tomorrow. He's a vital player for us. And I think he was actually really good when he came on for the last half an hour against Real Madrid. Looked a threat, carried the ball for us, brilliant dribbling ability, and scored an absolutely wonderful free kick. I know he said it was one of the best moments of his life. And I can understand that, because scoring at the Bernabeu, I'm sure, in the Champions League is a dream that every kid that wants to become a footballer has. It was a consolation at 5-0 though, and it was kind of weird to see. I think O'Reilly and Haksabanovic went to celebrate with him, and the rest of his teammates made their way back to the halfway line, which is understandable, at 5-1, but it was a good moment, and it meant we left the Bernabeu with a spring in our step, considerably better than if it finished 5-0 anyway. So I think Jota will play tomorrow deservedly. And I've just went with Kyogo through the middle. I know he started the other night and Yakimakis came on. Again, he had a couple of chances in the game. Kyogo, just on the basis that he scored a hat-trick against Dundee United the last time out and he was absolutely brilliant. I think he'll get the nod through the middle tomorrow. It wouldn't surprise me to see Yakimakis start, because again, Ange just chopped and changed between them a few times in recent weeks, so maybe Yakimakis could get the nod, and given that Kyogo started during the week, he could get a rest, and we might even leave him on the bench for the full 90 minutes and only go and use him if he's needed. But I just think based on that performance at Tannadice, he'll get the nod through the middle. So there you go, that's the team I think Ange Postecoglou will pick tomorrow. It's been a while since I got 11 out of 11, but it's so difficult with all these games and how many changes the manager makes. You never know what positions he's going to tinker with game to game, so it is difficult. But you can let me know who you think will start and how many changes there'll be in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back with all the full-time reaction tomorrow, and Kenny's going to be at the post-match press conference after the game to talk to the players and to Ange Postecoglou as well, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you tomorrow after the game. Cheers.